All right, everyone, welcome back to another live on the channel. Nick here, welcome back. Good to be back on the lives. Bit of a follow-up live to the discussion topic from last week, which was all about race planning and race preparation, getting your strategy right, leading into an event. We obviously had Melbourne 70.3 just on the weekend last Sunday. Ended up being perfect conditions for racing for those who are able to get out there. A bit sort of nervous about with the swim go ahead. It did. Did rain the night before, so roads were a little bit wet early, but then sun came out, dead flat, no wind for the majority of, for all of the pro race, and then majority of the age group race, there was no wind as well. So ended up being a really good day of racing and a really fast day of racing for a lot of athletes as well. But today we're going to be discussing, what happens now. So we went through, we planned, we raced. How do we go about debriefing from a race? That's going to be a discussion topic first, and then leave your questions, like I've put there in the chat, leave your questions in the chat, and we'll discuss some general topics towards the end if anyone wants to jump in and join us live. If you're watching this on the replay, leave your questions down below and I'll answer them on a future live. Always love to have some different topics to discuss, and anything I can do to then help you guys answer the questions that you have around sports science and endurance performance. That's always my favourite thing to do. So chuck those questions in the comment section down below if you are watching this on the replay. But we're going to get into our topic here, discussing how do we go about a race debrief. Realistically, I've done this a number of times for athletes, and I follow a very similar approach each time. And a lot of people will go about race debriefs and talking about the race and analysing it in very different ways. And most of the time, and this is a very generalisation, I say most of the time people will break down and review a performance and they want to do it immediately, particularly when something goes wrong. When something goes right and we have a really optimal race, most people are okay with us going away, not worrying about it so much, and then coming back to it at a later point in time, going, yeah, we can optimize this, and this, but ultimately we had a good day out. When things go wrong, most of the time people will jump in and just try and fix everything straight away. And that's the first thing that I really want to hit the nail on the head in terms of what I do from a race debrief perspective, is sometimes it's okay to have a bit of a conversation and vent and get things out immediately, but ultimately you need to give it a bit of space. We want to take the emotion out of any decision making we have immediately post that event, because that's when we're going to be hyped up the most. That's when we're going to be at this sort of elevated state psychologically where we're very emotional about what's just happened, particularly when something goes wrong. If you've had a flat tire, mechanical, if you had a bad race and you blew up, if it didn't go to plan, if you whatever it might be, you lost your nutrition, you had GI upset, whatever it might be, because it's just happened, that's the most likely opportunity for us to be quite emotionally invested in it. And that's what's going to actually blur our vision when it comes to decision making in a really accurate way. And this is something I've learned through my experience umpiring and officiating, is that the more emotion involved and the more you can remove yourself from the emotion in opposite direction, the better the decision making you can actually go through when you are actually looking at it from a very objective perspective and you don't have that emotional attachment or investment to it. You sort of take a step back, let things happen, assess then based on the fact rather than based on what you're charged up with at the time. So a classic case of this for athletes is when it does go wrong, they want to chat about it immediately post-race. And I'll engage this to some extent pending the athlete. I mean, a good example from the weekend is I had a couple of athletes racing. I had one in the pro field and a couple of amateurs rolling around. From an amateur perspective, most of them, again, will want to just quickly talk about it during the race. And I'll engage that for a little bit, but very quickly I try and divert the conversation to other things and try and really focus on what were the positives out today, even if there were some negatives. What were the positives and what are the things that we are going to go do now? We're going to go just chill out for the afternoon. We're going to go recover. We're going to take a couple of days off training. Let's talk about something else that's going on. Really sort of shift the focus away from any analysis. From a pro perspective, yes, we need to do a little bit of a debrief, but largely the debrief and the analytical part isn't about stats, data, decisions, tactics, things like that. For me, it's mostly just allowing that athlete to vent and dump a bit of emotional energy immediately so that they can move on. So you got to pick your battles a little bit there. But I really, for the most part, for most of the athletes that I work with, I don't really get into the nitty gritty details until much later in the week. So we are now Wednesday. Race was on Sunday. Really, from this point onwards is where I actually start having those really clear conversations, and where I start to engage those conversations around what do we need to do from a numbers perspective. Do we need to change what we're doing in the immediate lead up to the next race if it's coming up soon? Do we need to change our training? Do we need to recover more? All of that complex analysis stuff really for me starts now. Gives the athlete a bit of time to breathe, sort of process, think about it more objectively, take the emotion out of it. It's still obviously an emotional thing, particularly when races go wrong, but we start to get better results and we start to have better conversations and a lot more accuracy with the conversations around what happened. Very easy when you're emotional to play the blame game, and this happens between athletes and coaches all the time, and unintentionally. People do it because they are emotionally worked up, but it's the type of thing that we want to sort of eliminate as much of that as we can, because that's where, again, those bad decisions are made. Like, you don't want to make a rash decision that then costs you even further for the next race. Like, I've seen it happen. I've heard it happen where athletes will finish a race, have a terrible time out, and then just immediately dump their coach and they want to move on. They're like, I need something different. That didn't work. It's like, well, the 9 months that you put in got you a fair way there. Maybe it was something that we did on race day. Maybe it's something we did in the prep that we could tweak next time, and we know more about you. Because realistically, we know all the science. I was listening to an interesting podcast yesterday that brought this up. We know all the science, we know the physiology, and we're constantly investigating and studying. But at the end of the day, each individual athlete is their own little case study in terms of how this physiology interacts. There's going to be these subtle differences. And so each preparation, we're going to learn a little bit more. Just because we came out and we had a win doesn't mean we know everything. What that actually probably blinds us to is maybe a few things that we didn't know, and we're not going to pick up on because we thought we don't think about them because we got the result we wanted. But it's a classic, like you learn more from your losses. But when we don't have a great race or we don't have a great event, you immediately start nitpicking at things that maybe actually don't matter, but sometimes then also missing the things that really do matter. And it could just be a small tweak, and sticking to the process largely is probably going to get you the result next time. Sometimes you do need a big overhaul. Not all the time, but I have had it happen in rare cases where we need to have a really big, solid overhaul of absolutely everything. But we don't need to put necessarily everything in the bin just because we had a bad race. And this is, again, those poor decisions in terms of just throwing everything out straight away and having a really negative reaction largely comes from that immediate couple of days after the race, immediate 24 hours even, again, emotionally charged, but making bad decisions. So that's the biggest thing, and that's what I really want to emphasize with race debriefs is let's go through and have a look at all of the facts from a position where we're not as attached to it. We just look at them as facts, and then we talk about it in a really balanced way, and we can understand, all right, what are our opportunities now? What are the areas that we need to work on? Here's really how the plan's going to look over the next little while. Once we get through all of that, then it's a pretty logical process for me. I don't do anything too crazy. I just go through and break it down segment by segment. So if it's a marathon runner, we might look at, all right, what panned out in the race? Did we fade towards the back end, and what point did we fade? Did we start to crumble at the 36K mark, or did we start to crumble at the 39K mark? Like, what does this mean in relation to what some of our training data tells us, and some of the training volume that we did? Do we need to manipulate some of that? If it's a triathlon, we just start simple. We start with the swim. How did the swim go initially? What were the things in the swim that contributed to a faster or slower time than what we expected, or were we bang on what we were aiming for in the swim? What happened then through transition one, and then as we got onto the bike? Like, did we have an amazing swim, a pretty okay bike, but then a horrible run? Or did we have a pretty ordinary swim, but then we came good in the bike and we sort of gained a bit of time, but then the run was sort of not quite up to standard? Like, you just work through each of the pieces of what are the demands of the event, what did we end up accomplishing, and then how are we going to meet that demand better next time? So a conversation I had with an athlete a couple of months ago now around a half marathon was we faded towards the back end. The last 4 to 5Ks really saw a little bit of a dip off, and then it was sort of quite variable. And what we identified was it wasn't necessarily an inability to hold the pace that we needed to. What we saw was we just struggled to hold it for longer periods of time. So we started to see a lot more variability, which we put back down to, we had a look at what was the longest runs leading in, and we sort of identified that our longest run, our biggest run leading in was probably actually a little bit too early prior to the race. We probably started dropping back some volume, brought the intensity up, but probably drop back the volume a little bit too early. Easy opportunity for us to then work on that next time, work on a bit more durability, a little bit more of that muscular endurance and that overall capacity side of things. So that's what we're doing in this preparation. We're working on, let's keep the long run long and in the program for a much longer period of time until we get up to that taper, and let's see how much of an effect that has. Because from a pace perspective, we nailed it right up until that last five or so K, 4K, really nailed it. We start to see more variability. How can we try and just keep that more constant? Because the more constant we can make it, and what I mean by the variability was we actually then started running above our target pace, and then we went well below, then above, then well below, rather than sitting on it. Because we were sort of playing this game of we slipped down, so we're trying to play catch up, and then because we played catch up, we burnt ourselves too much, so we had to slow down. How can we try and keep that and just stay on the pace, stay on our target pace all the way through to the end? I mean, that's really what we're trying to achieve. So we just need to break it down logically and think about what are the demands of the event. What are we trying to do? What are the components that really challenged us? What are the components that we really handled well? Was it a particularly hot race? Did we manage the heat really well, but we just didn't have the conditioning in the legs to be able to continue to keep going at the back end of the race, and that's why we faded? Or was it the other way around? We had more than enough conditioning, but we really struggled with the heat because we didn't do enough acclimatization or acclimation beforehand to really get used to that heat load stress. You just gotta work through and just tick all the boxes and go, all right, did we do this well? Yes or no, fundamentally. Yes or no, all the way through all the different categories. That's going to identify those opportunities for that next event and throughout your next block of training on where we can actually move things, change things to get the more desired outcome and over time. And again, coming back to my point before, I can't stress it enough. If we're looking at this objectively, you're going to be really thorough in this process, and really go through and think about every possibility. Like from a running sense, what are all the variables that we might think about? Well, we might think about heat and environment. We might think about running economy and technique, which also might incorporate shoe choice for a future race. We might also talk about our conditioning and our training in terms of volume, our intensity, how much time we spend at target pace, how much time we need to do elsewhere, what are our capacities overall. Some of the other physiological markers, like what's our blood lactate profile now? Is it improving, not improving? Are we then identifying some opportunities from a nutrition sense leading into the race, during the race? These are all that you go through, and there's actually quite a lot of factors that are actually going to influence something as simple as strength training as well. Well, I think of the running example. Like, is that going to aid back into our economy? Did we do enough? Did we do an appropriate program from a strength perspective? Do we need to change the set rep scheme? All of these little components fundamentally build up to lead to what our race outcome is. And then it just gets a bit more complicated when we talk about triathlon, because we've just got 3 sports now, and then we've got all the individual components. You think about, that's just a running example. We then take all those and apply that to the swim. We take all those and apply that to the bike. Like, we're now talking about aerodynamics, bike fit and position. We're talking about helmet choice, skin suit choice. We're talking about rolling resistance on the bike. But then the swim, we're talking about what wetsuit are you wearing? Do you have your tri-suit up or down underneath your wetsuit? Does that free your arms up a little bit more? There's a number of different factors that we have to really consider there and work on. But ultimately, if we start going through and build up a bit of a checklist of what are all the demands and different factors contributing to a race performance or the race performance we're looking for, what did we execute well? What didn't we execute well? Go through a bit of a checklist there. You're going to come out with a pretty clear idea of where we need to go, and then from there, that's the skill and the knowledge that you or your coach or whoever you're working with needs to have to be able to work out a strategy to improve that. I'm not going to go through and give all my strategies away on how I would go through improving, because like I said, there's a lot of factors there. But like something simple for a lot of amateur triathletes would be go and get properly bike fit. Like, I mean, your personal body mass is going to be the biggest producer of drag or resistance that's going to slow you down on a bike course compared to anything else. Like, you can have the fanciest bike, you have the fanciest helmet, you have the coolest wheels, you be punching ridiculously high power for an amateur perspective, but you're not going to be fast if your body position's not in a spot that's actually going to be aerodynamic for us. So that's one of the really simple fixes that I go, let's go and get you fit up properly and in a nice comfortable position, a really aero position, and then we can start building stuff off out of that. Like that's a really simple fix for a lot of amateurs that we don't often think about. It's like aerodynamics for amateurs. People go, oh, they think wind tunnels, they think all this complex stuff, it's really expensive. No, it's a really simple thing. It's like get your body in the right position and you're 95% of the way there. All the other little 1%ers, yes, help to an extent. Like what tire pressure and tires you run and wheels and things like that. They help, but ultimately it's like go for the big ticket items when we're going through and identifying those opportunities, because that's what's actually give us even more of an advantage compared to our previous performance. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight in terms of a bit of a process I go through. Keep in mind, remember, can't stress this enough. Take the emotion out of any decision making you make, and that's not just in race debriefs. That's in race planning and strategy that we talked about in last week's live as well. That's in training decisions during the week. Like, don't make any decisions based on just purely based on emotion. And if you're a bit frustrated, if you feel frustrated, don't make any decisions. Wait till that sort of calm down. You can understand and process it before we then start making choices, because we're actually going to end up with some better outcomes in the long run. Like, look at the big picture. Constantly think about what is the bigger purpose or bigger picture here. And it's going to give you a better ability to take that smaller piece out. These small little things that come up, they're going to come up. They're natural. They're perfectly fine. But we don't want to buy into those, because that's what's going to cause more havoc across our whole preparation, rather than looking at. And I guess the analogy for that is if you have one bad training session in a 6-month preparation, you're going to be fine. If we have 6 months of bad training sessions, like, that's a bit of a different story. But if we have one bad training session, that's not going to blow up your entire 6 months of preparation. So think about it in that way. It's like we don't want to make decisions based on these small moments in time. It's like, just wait it out, give it a couple of days, relax, recover, do what you need to do. Now we can come back and really visit it from a fresh perspective, look at it objectively, where we're a bit more removed from it, so we can make some better analysis of what went on. And we're going to end up with a better outcome in the long run. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an insight in terms of how I process and go about race debriefs. If you do have any questions about any of that, feel free to leave them in the chat if you're joining us live, or chuck them in the comments down below if you're watching this on the replay. Always interested in your questions and comments and thoughts on some of these topics that we are talking about on the live streams here. We'll just have a quick look. Thanks for anyone who's joining us in the chat today. We might keep this one reasonably brief, because I didn't have too many questions that I had ready to bring up onto the live from the channel previously. I've been taking some, if you've been watching the previous lives, been taking some questions in the comment sections on some other videos on the channel, and bringing those into the live stream, particularly some of the longer form questions that might be a bit more complex, a bit difficult for me to just quickly type an answer to on my phone. So if you do have those, if you have questions on videos, put them in the comment section and let us know, because we'll bring them over here and we'll chat about them in the live format, so you get that response up on the channel. It gives you a little bit of a shout out, because I'll bring the question up on the screen so everyone can see it as well. Will's in the chat. Good to see you again. We'll quickly, he's picked up the fact that I'm wearing a hoodie today, that it's not too out there in terms of this little logo here is actually my logo. If you've been over to my website, which is just my name, nickjankowskis.com, you might have seen that little logo at the top of the homepage. I did get this hoodie made up as a bit of a test run. If anyone is interested, let me know as well if you're interested in getting a hold of one of these hoodies. I've got some ideas on what I want to do with some stuff over the next little while. I am interested. I know a lot of you might be interested in maybe some cycling kit or something over the long run, in terms of be interested in getting a kit out there and help support the channel. If you are interested, let me know. Always happy to hear your ideas. If no one's interested, we won't do them. But if we've got a few people who are interested in maybe picking up a hoodie, a t-shirt, or maybe a cap or something, I got a cap done for work. I'm going to get this logo put on a similar cap and see how that goes. Really, really happy to sort that out if anyone wants to rock those on a race day or pre-race, post-race, whatever it might be, or just during your training week. Would love to see the logo start to get out there and get a bit of airtime. So yeah, good pick up there. Definitely am wearing the new kit, which does look pretty good. It's got the Michigan blue in the hood as well. They're really comfy hoodies, really good, nice and warm. So definitely something that if you're interested in, let us know. If there's any other questions that anyone has who's joining us live, feel free to chuck them in. Otherwise, like I said, leave your comments down below, because I will get back to them for the future live. We're aiming, as always, Wednesdays, 10 a.m. Melbourne time. Next week, I'll be jumping on live, so I believe that's the 21st of November. Again, 10 a.m. Melbourne time, so keep in mind with any time zone difference, that's when we're going to be jumping on and having a chat. The following week, I probably won't be jumping on, though, because I'll be on, I'm heading away, getting some time out, having a bit of a break. So I won't be on the following week, but then we'll be back the week after that. So been good to get back on these, get back on the live streams. Hopefully you enjoy them. A bit of a different format, a good way to keep some videos flowing on the channel as well. So you're keeping up to date with what's going on, what I'm thinking about, what I'm doing. And this is a nice, easy way for me to do them as well, because I can just chuck them straight up, and then you can see exactly what's going on straight away. You watch those replays, but also it gives me a chance to sort of just get some thoughts out without necessarily sort of planning and thinking too much. I guess this is a bit more natural, what you would expect from me if you came in and had a session with me and we were talking about this from a consulting perspective. This is how I go about it, how I process it, how I discuss it, how I talk about it. So I think for me, it's a little bit more natural to do. So I really enjoy doing these live streams. But I might leave it there. If we don't have any more questions coming through, again, keep supporting the channel. Really appreciate those who jump on and subscribe, leave the comments, like the videos. Really do appreciate it. And to all those who have joined as channel members as well, if you click the join button down below, you can support the channel. I've joked about this a number of times, but less than a coffee a month. It just keeps things ticking along, allows me to sort of continue to make these videos. And the more people who just subscribe and watch these videos, the more I really enjoy making the videos, because it shows that it's having a positive impact and people are enjoying and relating to the content that I'm putting out. So definitely appreciate anyone who's clicked the join button especially, but anyone who's just clicked the subscribe button as well. Really do appreciate it. We're on the road to 5,000. We're getting close. We're only a couple of hundred off. So looking forward to get to that mark. Hopefully, maybe by the end of the year. Let's see if we can do it, get to the 5,000 subscriber mark by the end of the year. But I might leave it there for today. I'm going to go grab myself a coffee. As you know, if you watch the channel, it's 10:20 in the morning and I'm desperate for a coffee already. So I better go make one of those. But otherwise, thanks for joining us today. Look forward to seeing you in another one. And yeah, keep getting out there, training hard. Don't be emotional about your race debriefs, like we said at the beginning of this one. And yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you on the channel soon. Cheers, guys.